All right. So just so you know, this is now being recorded, so be careful what you say. Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
All right. So let's quickly, we'll have Connie and Rebecca Clem introduce themselves. So Connie, you were expecting from the Library of Congress, who I think is a national treasure. And Rebecca Clem is also really phenomenal. So she has an interesting background in statistics. So I thought especially Nick would appreciate this, who's going to be a math teacher. But the rest are science and have to rely on math as well, of course. But has now a company called Numbers Alive and is on a mission to help with global numerical literacy and has lots of cool products for doing that, which is great. And Connie, they can see both of you, so you can sit right in there. It's good. So I'm gonna let Connie introduce herself, and then Rebecca, and then we'll have you introduce yourselves. Just again, who you are, and what grade levels you're going to be teaching, what subjects.
Okay, hi. And I want to make sure I generally don't modulate my voice. So if I'm screaming at you, you just raise your hand and I will lower my voice into my indoor voice. I have worked at the Library of Congress for 50 years. My first job was in Trinidad, working on the social behavior of butterflies and fiddler crabs with William Beebe, the first man to go down under the ocean in the Biosphere. Until he went down in the 1930s, man had only gone 350 feet below the surface of the water. So he was a pioneer. And I had a chance out of college to teach at Northfield School for Girls, founded by D.L. Moody, the great evangelist, Jesus Calls Us, or the Tumult. And instead of saying yes, I went back to the vocational office and I said, isn't this something a dite more interesting? And so the vocational officer pulled out this letter from William Beebe saying he occasionally took people on expeditions. And I, among other things, was his girl Friday. And so I would help him with his correspondence. And he would get letters from George Gaylord Simpson, Ernst Mayr, Alfred Romer, all people whose textbooks I had read. And so I would just get very excited and saying, oh my goodness, we've got a letter from George Gaylord Simpson. And he would come over to the desk and he would throw that letter to the back of the desk and say, today we're going to answer the letters of children. We are going to give them experiments to do. We're going to give them observations to make. We're going to invite them back and to write back. And he said, George Gaylord Simpson is a scientist in his own right. And but if we today can corral a child into a life of science, we will have earned our pay. And here at the Library of Congress, we have done a lot for teachers and for students. We have guides to science fair projects, for teaching astronomy, for school gardens. We've done everyday mysteries where we use a question and answer format, and UBIT 2, which was the America's Association for Teaching with Primary Sources, used the traceable as an example of how you could teach kids to do research. Because you answer the question, you look at books as well as materials online. And when we do guides, we give the bibliographies, the abstracting indexing services to use, the bibliographies, the journals, and only at the end do we say, if you have not found your answer, use these organizations, because we believe that people should do their own research, or they should know a lot about their subject before they throw themselves upon the mercy of a professor. And we also encourage people to ask questions, because here at the Library of Congress, we have 155 million items. And I probably, having been here 50 years, know 1,000 of them. And so that leaves a lot, right? And so I do a lot of work for the Correspondence of Charles Darwin, which is housed in the University of Cambridge in England. And you would think with the British Museum and Oxford and Cambridge that they would find anything that they needed, right? Well, the British Museum, if you've ever looked at their cataloging, is mostly dots and dashes. It's very hard to figure. They don't have any cross-references. They don't have additional series notes. They don't have additional title notes. So I am able to find here at the Library of Congress, because we catalog with many, many different little ways to get into the articles. We have lots of subject headings, lots of series notes, and added entries, so we can find material. And so one day they said, Connie, there is, we think, in the 18th century, 19th century, one of these, in Mardi Gras, one of these clubs or crews wrote a poem that had something to do with origin of species. And we would like, if that's possible, to find the poem. And I thought, my goodness, they A, don't know it exists. B, would I go to New Orleans Public? Would I go to Tulane University? Is there an organization that keeps track of memorabilia from Mardi Gras? And BB would work us 24/7, and then he could see when we were tired and getting a little bit tetchy, and he would send us off on a vacation or to Tobago, or he would invite a steel band in, or he would send us to Carnival. And going to Carnival, I found that anything that had been printed for the day would end up in the gutter, along with formaldehyde, rum, and lots of things worse. I don't know.
But when it's recorded, then we'll see you.
Okay. So anyway, I went to the card catalog, the online catalog, sorry, and I put in the word and crew, and I came up with a 1873 book, The Mystic Crew of Comus. Can you show that to them? I don't want it. I want them to see it.
Yeah.
And in the title page, you can see it says Darwin's Missing Link. And it is a beautiful book with wonderful illustrations. And now can you turn it back so I don't have to look at myself? Yes, thank you. I'm much more interested in seeing you than seeing myself. One of the collections at the Library of Congress is the papers of Carl Sagan. And I had to go to a meeting with, because my boss was ill, with the very top people in the library. And they had no idea that Carl Sagan had actually used the Library of Congress. And in his book, The Comet, he says, could they see that? Yeah. The best part of writing the book was meeting our Ruth Freitag. She was my mentor, but then she ended up on my staff. So you have to remember to be good to everybody, because you it's going to be head over you. So she pointed out to him that cartoons and sheet music capture the tone and tenor of the times. And many people, when they saw a comet coming, they thought it foretold the end of the world. And in 1912, when the Titanic sank, there were 23 songs written about the Titanic. And so An eighth of the illustrations in this book are from Ruth Freitag. And you can see here, can you see the comet rag? And there's also the comet two-step. And so it's just really wonderful. But you should think when you, that cartoons and sheet music are really important. And I'll tell you one more story that illustrates why you should ask questions, because it helps the librarian find things in her collection that she doesn't know about. A man came in wearing khakis and looking a little rumpled, and he said, "Do you have anything on resuscitation?" And I said smartly, "You need a manual of resuscitation." And he said, "Actually, I'm an actor, and I'm going to be in the TNT movie the day they shot Lincoln. And I want to know where to put my hands on Lincoln's body, because I am going to be Dr. Leal, who jumps over the dress circle and is first at Lincoln's side." I knew Dr. Leal in real life had only been a doctor for 6 weeks. So you can imagine how nervous he was. But anyway, I talked with him thinking to myself, is this a possible question or a possible question? And so he said, well, somebody told me I wanted the Sylvester Marshall Manual of Resuscitation. So I said, I'm a librarian. You give me a name, I'll get you the book. I looked in our catalog. I looked in WorldCat. I looked in the Union list. I looked in, called up the National Library of Medicine. I called up the Mutter Museum attached to the College of Physicians and Surgeons in Philadelphia, because they had a big exhibit of the health of the president. And so I thought, aha. And they said, honey, we cannot find this. But I tell you what, the American Society of Anesthesiologists did an exhibit on old methods of resuscitation. Call there. So I did, and I got Mr. Sims, and I told Mr. Sims what I was after, and he said, oh, Miss Carter, you are so confused. And I said, excuse me? Well, Henry Sylvester and a Marshall Hall, and you have gone and mixed up their names. I'm so sorry. I did not say, well, this is what the patron gave me. You just take it on the hilt. So I said, I'm sorry, but I need the one that does resuscitation. And he said, they both did. And I said, I need the method used on Abraham Lincoln. And so indeed, he said that was Henry Sylvester. And he said let's see, where's that big book? Or bring me that little, this one? That one, yeah. And I should have a big book that has picture. Look on the chairs.
It's not this one.
No, it's a notebook.
Yeah, it's like a binder.
Yeah, yeah, but not to worry. Here. So I did some more research, and I found this book, which is Lincoln's Last Hours, and it's by Dr. Leal. And it was a speech he gave in 1909, which would have been the 100th year of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. And so, not to worry, this will do. Okay. And so, on page 5, he said, I placed my finger on the president's right radial pulse, but could perceive no movement of the artery. For the purpose of reviving him, if possible, we removed him from the chair to a recumbent position on the floor of the box. And as I held his head and shoulders, while doing this, my hand came in contact with a clot of blood near his shoulder. He had thought that the president had been stabbed because there was a bloody dagger on the floor. He had seen the dagger in the hand of the assassin, and Major Rathbone, who was sitting next to him, had been slashed with the dagger. So, and what I wanted to show you was the picture that Dr. Sims sent me, which showed, here it is. Well, there you are, here. See if you can see this map. And in the book, he says that they put Lincoln on the floor of the box, and then they moved his hands over his head, up and down, instead of having him, as you see lifeguards do, on his stomach. And so this book goes on and tells exactly where he put his hands. And so the actor was so thrilled that he sent me a picture of himself and Lincoln. And you can see there, dressed up as properly. And you see that he thanks me. And I have been mentioned in over 35 books, and mostly it's because I'm dyslexic. All the authors have said, when nobody else could find the material, Miss Carter could. It's because I transpose numbers and letters, and since 1800, when the library started in the Capitol, we have hired dyslexic shelters. And so it cost 100 years, and I have been able to find it. And so he writes, you are an angel. But I have read it all these years. It happened, this was a query from 1997. I have read it as you are an angle. And how does that man learn his lines? He is more dyslexic than I am. And I showed it, nobody said to me, Connie, he says angel. I don't know what they thought, but be that as it may. What I want you people to do is I am supposed to be at this point writing Uneventful Life 50 years below stairs at the Library of Congress. But I'm still doing content. I've just done something on the difference between centipedes and millipedes. I have just updated, and this might be something people would be interested in, school gardens. You know that the anniversary of the World War I is coming up, and there is a lot of interest in school gardens. Mind you, we made a woman with more money than God. She is out there on the West Coast cooking at Chez Panisse. Well, she knew that school gardens were a 19th century concept, but could she find anything out there on the West Coast? No. She was going to cook for members of Congress at the Folklife Festival in 2005. And I knew it was in July and gonna be hot here in Washington, D.C. And she was going to have a fire. She had a raised garden of veggies, and she had bought from Breadline the pizza dough. And so she wanted at that time, and still does, to have the school garden part of the curriculum. And so we mounted a small exhibit of new books on school gardens. And one of my staff said, well, why don't we invite Alice Waters? I said, Alice Waters is an important person, and to myself, I thought, she does not have time to come up to the Library of Congress. But because I always try to do what my staff tells me, I found an email and I wrote to Alice Waters and said that we had mounted a small exhibit that I thought I could get her into the rare book room, and that we had many, many materials between 1890 and 1920, when school gardens really flourished in this country. And in World War I, there was a school garden army that grew, and they had lieutenants and sergeants and all the rest. And they grew all the food used by communities from Maine to California. And the farmers supplied our troops and the Allies. And so I didn't think we'd hear from her. And I also told her we were air conditioned. I thought if anything gets her up here, it would be the air conditioning. Mm-hmm. But I told my staff member not to get her hopes up. But I had done as she had suggested and written. Well, I got back to my desk, and there was a telephone call from Alice Waters thanking us for our kind invitation and saying she would come up 4 hours. She was going to be very busy, but she had set aside 4 hours. And if we could get the old material, that's what she was really interested in. And if we could get the School Garden Army and the World War I conservation of food posters. And so we did, right on this very table, we put out 150 magazine articles, pamphlets, and books from 1890 to 1920. And she absolutely, we have pictures of her absolutely drooling over, looking over all this material. And she had us Xerox 1,000 pages. I mean, we didn't tell our bosses because, you know, you're supposed to do 10 to 30 pages per person. And that was 1,000, any way you look at it, that was more than 30. She was such an entertaining person, and she had a lot of charisma. So I think we felt we wanted just to march, hop, 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 right behind her. There's a new upswing in school gardening. But the School Garden Army manuals that were done by the Department of Agriculture are still really good. And there is I wanted to show you, there's a new, not a traceable, a new guide. I just had it on school gardens. The one I showed you, I showed you. Oh yeah. Well, we got math in the gardens for those who were interested in
edible schoolyard.
edible schoolyard. But I got a new publication that will give you the URL for the school garden. It's not a book. It's one sheet of paper. Oh, here it is. Here, just looking. And this is the logo that Alice Waters wants to use. It's Uncle Sam is the Pied Piper, and there's hose and trowels and shovels, and a little girl with a seed packet. But anyway, what's really that you people will like is there's 6 URLs at the end that can be used to find out more about school gardening. And we have a lot of plant experiments. We've done a lot of work for students, telling them what headings to look under, what magazines are useful, and all the books that either index science fair projects or actually give science fair projects. And we have a lot in the plant sciences. And so those are on our website. You would just look under tracer bullets, and you can look up under environmental, you can look up under space science project, you can look up under agriculture, natural history, science projects. And I think that those might give you some ideas.
And they're actually next week going to visit a school garden at a local elementary school
and
kind of see what can be done with greenhouses and aquaponic systems and things like that. And those are called freedom gardens, weren't they? Like there was a real.
Well, the Victory Garden.
Oh, Victory Garden.
The Victory Garden was World War II. These were called community, and actually, even if they were in vacant lots, they might be called community, but even they were called sometimes school gardens because school children were, you know, they had used up all the schoolyards, and so they were moving into vacant lots. And there's so much interesting stuff on school gardens. And I also, the lab I was in, you'll be interested in this, the New York Zoological Society, who paid my way and my salary in Trinidad, I got $150 a month. Well, I did get board and room, so that was but it was named Simla after a Rudyard Kipling had a place called Simla. And there is if you go in and look in on Google and look up Trinidad, and I think here,
Yeah, there it is.
yeah, Voices from the that tells a lot about the field station. And these people who called me up from the Wildlife Conservation Society, that's the new name of the New York Zoological Society. And they're not doing, these people are mostly raising money, but they did some research and they found you are looking at the oldest living person who worked with William Beebe. And so they came down and spent a day with me and interviewing. They had not known people who worked at field stations. So it used to be, the Smithsonian had field stations. A lot of places had field stations where people did research or went on expeditions. We've got a lot of expeditions, botanical and zoological and geographical here at the Library of Congress. This is one of the best places for discovery that's on. But they, as a thank you note, they sent me a big bottle of vermouth because William Beebe had Parkinson's disease and his appetite was not what it should be. So everybody had to stop their lab work 15 minutes early and have a vermouth. Well, I never had vermouth. And so they started me out with sweet vermouth, and every day they would put a drop of dry vermouth. And so by the end, I was drinking dry vermouth. And in Trinidad, rum was 59 cents a bottle, and toilet paper was $1.29. That was gay rum. That was really good stuff. And so we had our own lemons and limes. And so every night we sat out on a terrace and we drank rum and lime and water and a little sugar. And I don't know if you've heard of Don Griffin. He wrote Listening in the Dark. He was a bat specialist and he worked on echolocation. So he figured out and he built this little outdoor room with lots of wires. And so so he was doing experiments like you are on bat echolocation. Well, the first night he came and joined us for drinks. We didn't notice, but he had some equipment down by his side. And so we're drinking and having this civilized conversation. And all of a sudden you're there, And he would say, "Oh, that's a bat having dinner," and we had to just stop that. That was not civility, you know. I mean, we were just there to enjoy drinks, not to do research. Research was before dinner. So, well, I think it's probably time for Rebecca to do a little talking.
Okay.
I think they probably.
Oh, I want to be here.
We'll come back to you. No doubt. All right. So this is Rebecca Clem. She has a PhD in statistics, is an entrepreneur and an inventor, and like I said, has been working on all kinds of things associated with numerical literacy. So I'm going to let her talk more about her project and Numbers Alive and all kinds of cool stuff that she's been working on. And I haven't caught up with her yet, so I'm anxious to hear the update.
Well, hello there, teachers. Bless you for what you're doing for the future. That is so important to our culture and our society, and we don't thank you enough here in the United States. That's one of the patterns I absolutely find as I travel the world working with teachers, is that we are one of the worst in terms of how we value education. And I think that speaks to very non-positive things about what's happening here, and we are behind the 8 ball on that. Really fine. Well, I have Numbers Alive, which the idea was, after I did a musical, people said, oh, this is fascinating. I talked about the history of math. I talked about it visually through geometry and where it came from, and in a musical called Cooking Up Numbers, just as a bucket list for my life, because I love musical and I love theater. I took on this task for people asking me how to alleviate math anxiety. And I think I've actually come a long way from that, learning about that now by working with teachers, working with kids, working with parents and adults, and creating lots of interesting learning tools. And I think picking up a little bit about what's been happening here, my latest one, which I've been working on for 4 years, and it's actually going to be, I believe, the first utility patent on puzzles and polygons in 20 years in the US. That may not be quite true, but apparently, according to the Office of the Patent and Trademark Office, they have signed off on the utility patent to be released this party the day it actually comes out, because it's very expensive to get a utility patent. And what I had to do was explain to the US Patent and Trademark Office that a pentagon does not have to be regular. So it tells you something about how poorly geometry is part of the educational training of anything in our math program and in even the use of it. And last summer in Science Magazine, there was an interesting article about a new pentagon, an irregular pentagon from MIT and Harvard that will tessellate itself across a space, a flat surface, and the physics of these non-usual polygons is growing. My brother happens to be a theoretical physicist, and he's publishing on the waves of an equilateral triangle, different kinds that will be useful for networks and for medical devices, being able to determine without being so invasive. So I am very much into non-standard polygons, and out of my looking at how, and then I'm going to come around to the gardens, which is interesting, how I looked at how young children were taught geometry and shapes. They're usually on posters where it's color and shape. It's kind of like these two things we don't know what to do with, so we'll kind of put them together in children's books and in posters. And there's all this concern about different kinds of quadrilaterals because they have names on them. That seems to be the main reason. And they have to memorize those. And I realized that a child has heard the word pentagon, they've heard the word hexagon, but have no idea about the literacy of the word penta and the literacy of the word hex to understand that pentagon tells you exactly where its link to numbers is, but they don't teach it that way. It's through memorization, and none of them seem heptagons, and some see octagon. They can remember that because the octopus, but they don't really think very strong about where math came from, which is through geometry, long before algebra came in. And that zero, the hero, is not because it rhymes with zero, it's because that was the beginning of being able to have algebra and a base 10 system with place. And I realized that that's a big part of why there's anxiety. Most children are visual and they look at things, and so I really like to confuse some people by showing them, like I had to do with the patent and trademark fellow, that I can break a polygon, a standard polygon of 5 sides, a pentagon, into 2, 4, 6, 7, any number of pentagons. So the arithmetic of geometry is not linear. You can have a pentagon, the kissing pentagon, so 5 points plus 5 points equals 5 points. And when you get to 3 dimensions, it gets even more disturbed. Okay? And a lot of children actually see things more visually. Now, what I've done with this is I'm actually going to the Math Association of America. I never thought I'd go back to those things. They're meeting because out of starting with preschool shapes with polygons and number, I have a conjecture, which the heads of Northwestern and Stanford are trying to figure out if this is a conjecture that will be needed to be proven to be the Clem theorem. How about that? And the issue is that you can, and I'm trying to write it, I don't know if you ever have to write an abstract, but it's really in the area of topology, probably. Take any polygon, regular or not. It can be deconstructed, so it has insides, anything from 3 on up. It can be deconstructed into K polygons also of insides where they're non-overlapping and exhaustive. And that is my conjecture, which I developed from starting with a preschool puzzle that is now going into that. So you never, and it's a great story to try and talk about invention and how things are derived by using your hands and putting it together. And I kept exploring and going further. Now I am bringing all of this together in a lot of things where I was invited to speak at ISTE this June in Denver. I am building the town of Numberopolis. And this that all areas can enjoy, and it's global. So I've done it for international art festivals, and I've been asked to write in a STEAM journal, and I've also am up on the International WISE World Institute Summit on Education because it's so global and it encompasses any kind of discipline. So the issue is, what kind of a house would a number live in? I mean, it sounds so provocative and so weird, but you can then, what kind of, would you build it from? And my puzzles could be like you're playing Roman numerals and you're creating all kinds of flooring and siding. And then you look at animals and plants and what would they collect? And we know that 6 maybe likes to grow tulips and actually will be trading in tulips with Holland because it's a hexagonal structured flower. So you've got all these kinds of science and engineering and any kind of stuff that you want. And you also talk about what is in a town. Be there, and I've got to bring in the gardens now because look at all the geometry, the shapes, the plants that they can be building and we're adding to the town and parks. What becomes a town? What does it mean? And the patterns and the things that you build in there all are measured across every subject you can imagine and is very inventive and creative. So some of you who are creative, interesting teachers who would like some ideas to add to this, I welcome any ideas how to take this into what is a large project of letting kids create all ages. It goes way up to adult. So what is it that reflects a pattern? And of course, the higher level constants are coming to play there too. C, the speed of light. How would you reflect the meaning into something you would build and something that they would send off to their friends and say, this is where I live. So be creative and think and send me ideas.
All right.
And we would have to turn off the video that we can see of them. You just sent her. Yeah.
Are you guys okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our video quality is really not very good.
Neither is ours on this end.
Okay.
All right. So Connie has gathered a few books that I thought would be interesting for you to look at. Do you want to talk about the STEM to Story? Those books that you?
Yeah. I believe in as Rebecca does, in telling stories. I mean, I think that that's how you can get things across, and it makes it much easier for the children. And this is a new book, or at least it's new to me. It's STEM to Story, and in it, it's one of the stories is about owl pellets, and and breaking them down, dissecting them down, and being able to find and name the things that you find in the pellet. Because owls are one of those animals that eat things whole, so that they do have a lot of bones and things that you can either identify, or if there's only bits and pieces left, you get to name the bits and pieces. And this one, and there's a story. They give you a story to begin with, and then they give you, this one is, they may be bones. I think they first, they used to call it owl pellets or birds and bones, but now they want to make it more of a mystery. So you say, there may be bones. And gives you another little story on the power of one is incredibly important. And you read the little story, and then it tells you exactly what you need for the lab, and teaches the kids to make a journal. And anyway, and if somebody knows in the class, this is when you get them to raise their hand. And if somebody knows immediately that that's an owl pellet, you tell them to be silent, because this is a learning thing for all the class, and it won't be as much fun as you break down the pellet and find what's in it. But they've got great things. It's enthralling and effective lesson plans for grades 5 to 8. And it's a good publisher, Jossie Bass, and it is a 2015 book. And I also have a great book, The Quiet Extinction, Stories of North America's Rare and Threatened Plants. And that gives the story of plants, and they're interesting. Just like I have done a webcast on plant hunters, and a lot of teachers are using plant hunters as a hook to get people interested in botany. Oh, and this is one of my favorite books. This is The Plant Hunter, and it's a children's. It's by Anita Silvey. You can go and look it up on in our catalog or on Amazon. And she was a noted critic of children's books. But she did all her work at the Arnold Arboretum in Boston, and they had a lot of manuscripts. And it points out why there were lots of expeditions to China, because China is the same latitude and longitude as New England and the mid-Atlantic. So that things that would grow in China will grow here. And but they are such swashbuckling, wonderful people, plant hunters. And they put up, you know, with mosquitoes and bears and Indians, and sometimes they even had to eat the seeds that either eat the seeds that they'd gathered or collapse. And so kids really like that, and you'll get a lot of ideas if you look at the webcast. Just put in Connie Carter Plant Hunters into Google. Instead of using the library's catalog, I often use Google myself. And here's a good book. Here's Start with a Story, The Case Method of Teaching College Science. And all of these start with a story and then get the kids interested, and then it goes on and gives the case thing. Here's New England Journal of Medicine on breast cancer, promoting critical thinking in the sciences. Clicker cases, introducing case study teaching into large classrooms. So all these books that have the word story in them, and you can go into plant plants, and then just and stories. You can do a lot of keyword searching. I mean, that's how I found by putting in Darwin and crew, which I found out, frankly, how to spell from Google. It's not C-R-E-W, it's K-R-E-W-E. So, Google is my friend. Being dyslexic, I can't spell hardly anything. But I do, and it's too bad I don't have my my card here. But I am certain that my email is so easy. C for Connie, C-A-R for Carter, at LOT.gov. So if you're stuck and can't find a resource or what all, we because of the copyright law, we have so much on science activities, all the teacher journals you can imagine from here and abroad. So we even, when we do things sometimes on, we did a guide on science education in the 21st century. And we have things from England and Sweden and what all to show you what kinds of things that they're thinking about, what kinds of things that they're doing. And we always give, as I say, abstracting and indexing service. So for you people, Environment Complete is absolutely one of my favorite databases. And then there's another one, Environmental and Pollution Control Management. That has a lot of good environmental things. And the tracer bullets all have lists of abstracting and indexing services, as well as websites that are useful.
And so, yeah, explain to them what this tracer bullet is, Connie.
Oh, these are, tracer bullets are meant to put you on target. And so what they do is they have a scope note. They have an introduction to the subject, which is usually an article or something from an encyclopedia, just to know if you want to get into that subject, and you may read this short article and say, this is not for me. And then this one happens to be on endangered and threatened species. So it tells you which subject headings are highly relevant, which ones are relevant, sort of endangered plants, endangered species, plant conservation. Those are important ones. Relevant might be biodiversity conservation, extinct animals, rare animals, and related might be environmental law, environmental genetics, invasive plants. We've also done one on invasive plants. And then it gives you basic text, additional text, and it breaks it down into birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Then we have dictionaries, encyclopedias, wild animal trade, and we always put in books for younger readers. I think that's William Beebe, you know, alive and well at the Library of Congress. And conference proceedings. And indeed, I once did have the president of Stanford, who was a molecular biologist, Donald Kennedy, and he came up and gave me a hug one day, and I said, well, what's that for? And he said, somebody died, and I inherited a student in mariculture. What I know about mariculture, you can put on the head of a pin. But he said, with your tracer bullet, I knew who was doing conferences. I knew what government agencies were working. I knew what the abstracting and indexing services. I knew which, you know, some recent dissertations on the subject. And he said, you know, the guy thought I knew something. And so he said, thank you for coming up with a publication that gives you an overview, gives you the the journals that are important in that particular area, and gives you some articles, and also gives you the names of organizations. Like in this one, the Center for Biological Diversity, the Center for Plant Conservation, Conservation International, all are interested, and the Biodiversity Heritage Library. So anyway, it gives you an overview of the subject, and in various different disciplines. And why somebody from Oxford came and said, Connie, I want some of those tracer bullets. And I said, you don't need those at Oxford. And he said, yes, the boys are still getting, and now girl, are still getting 3 moldy references from their tutors. They have no idea, in order to do research, that you need technical reports, you need dissertations, you need biographies, you need conference proceedings, and all the different, they need to know all the different parts of the literature in order to really do research. And that's what the tracer bullet doesn't leave them to their own devices.
And are these available online too?
Yeah, those are available online. So you just look under, and it's listed right on the title, on the first page of the what do you call it?
Library of Congress website?
No, on the Science and Technology website, and I think you've got one. Here's what it looks like.
Yeah, and I can bring back copies of all this so they can see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or if you or if you email me, you know, I can point them out, or I can send you a copy of the I can give you the URL. And right on here it says tracer bullets. It says technical reports, selected internet resources, quick guides, and right down here that's a special webcast with Connie Carter, and that's school gardens, food thrift, the history of household technology. Oh, we've got a big collection of egg beaters and irons, and plant hunters. And I think plant hunters and school gardens will probably be the best for you right now. There's a lot of interesting stuff in food thrift, all about the Civil War and various wars when we had meatless and wheatless, and a lot of interesting things food-wise. And before the Civil War, very few women had patents. But because of especially the blockaded South, they couldn't get any salt. So what they did is they dug up the dirt floors of smokehouses that had been dripping hams and bacon and pork for years. And they dug them up, and they boiled it up with water, strained out the dirt, and the liquid, just like Lewis and Clark, they put the remaining liquid out in the sun, and then they scraped the salt off the bottom of the pan and used it. But they came up with all sorts of ideas of how to buy food, methods of canning, and what all. So they went to business and got all these trade, all these patents.
Do you guys have any questions for Connie?
Like, you just think about it. and know that I'm just on the other end of an email.
Oh, thank you.
And that is really true. Like, when you have any question of any sort, she's more than willing to answer those. And
show you where the resources are. The math people are coming over here because they're trying to find good ways of math to kids. And one way is through food, culinary math. And one of the the Einstein teachers usually come to us. And one is writing another book on cooking as chemistry. And the story she likes me to tell is that my mother went to school with Ruth Wakefield, the mother of the chocolate chip cookie. In the 1930s, and she made cookies for the guests every day. She was going to make her chocolate jumble. She went to the cupboard and there was no cocoa. She had no car, there was no 7-Eleven, there was nothing to do, but fortunately, she spied 2 bars of Nestle semi-sweet chocolate. And she said, I will chop these up the size of peas and throw them in the batter. They will melt and I will have my chocolate jumble. Well, they came out of the oven and they hadn't melted. And so the first chocolate chip cookie was born. She had, but she had nothing else. So she did, and they said, oh, these are so much better than the chocolate jumble. And so the Nestle people were having a sales meeting, and they said, how come we cannot keep the Nestle bars on the shelf? Oh, Miss Wakefield's making cookies, and she's giving away the recipe. So they went to Miss Wakefield, and they said, if you will let us print the recipe on the bars, we will give you a lifetime supply. She thought, so they did, and in 1939 they made the morsels. But if you look at that recipe today, they have left out 1 tablespoon of hot water, because in the 1930s, in order to get the baking soda to do its job, you had to combine it with a teaspoon of hot water. Well, the Carter family, even though it's not on the recipe, we still put in a teaspoon of hot water, and our positive best. You can receive packages at the Biosphere, but if you can find an address for me to send some cookies so that you can try them, I will send you some. They are lip smacking. You know, instead of a retirement party, I made 70 boxes of cookies and took them around, and still 20 boxes to me, to the various offices, and so that I could shake hands and talk to people and tell them that I was going to be a volunteer full-time for 5 years. Because the reason I'm retired is because the Library of Congress is now shelving its book by size. Big books, little books, instead of by elephants, by climate change, by biodiversity, by James Madison. And I just think that's wrong. Wrong. So I plan to be here another 5 years, and I'm not going to say when they realize what a bad thing this was, I'm not going to say I told you so. I'm going to have a dress made like Danelle has, and I'm just going to say, I told you so, on the dress, and I'm just going to walk up and down the halls and say nothing. That's how I'm going to take care of it.
Send that to Janelle right now. I'm trying to. Yay!
We're at about an hour right now. I do like to, are you guys still hearing us okay?
Not really.
No, it's starting to skip out. I think the bandwidth is.
We think that shelving books that way is wrong, though.
Did you hear about the cookies?
Yeah.
We saw the arms go up in the air, so you got the so yeah, I think we'll probably let you guys go. We're gonna go grab dinner and also grab some drinks. But I will I've taken pictures of all the book titles too, and I'll bring back some resources.
Yeah, we could probably take pictures of the books, because there's some really interesting books here, and then we can send those. I can have somebody on my staff, and we can digitize the covers for you, and she'll give me a email.
Yeah.
And we'll send them out to you.
Yeah.
Because there's some books, I think, that are not well known that you really might enjoy.
Yeah, so
Please, yes.
I'll give Connie all of your email addresses so that she can get a hold of you. And then you can send her an address so that you can get some cookies from her.
Yes.
Yeah, and remember that they have improved soda so that you don't have to put in that teaspoon of water, but the teaspoon of water makes all the difference.
Hot water.
Oh yeah, hot water. Yeah.
Hot or warm?
Hot.
Hot.
Sometimes I do it lukewarm if I can't wait for the hot water to heat up.
Well, I hope you caught a lot of that, and I'll definitely catch up with you when I get back. Let's also let's thank both Rebecca and Connie for giving us their time.
Thank you.
And I will say that they're two of the women that I think respect teachers the most and really value how important you all are. So as pre-service teachers, you are incredibly valuable, and it's nice to meet people who will champion you as well. So they're both on your team, which is great.
Thank you.
Have fun at Monto Elementary visiting the school garden next week, and I will see you the week after that when I return.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.